Hopefully it would turn out as good as Muppet Babies.
I would hope.
That was one of my favorite shows when I was a youth.
You know, I feel like I watched it a lot, but I really don't remember much of it.
Oh, I can barely remember anything about it at all. I just know that it was one of my favorites.
Yeah, you know, I feel like I must have. You know, is there a way to watch it now in this internet era? Because
Probably.
I wonder how much I actually do, like how much I actually did watch. Because I do know that I've seen at least some of it, and I want to say it was one of my favorites, but I can't really remember what would have been my favorite. I don't know, probably the Ninja Turtles or something.
Mm-hmm. Not the Michael Bay Ninja Turtles. With teeth.
And human lips. Yeah, no. Not really a fan of that.
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
of the Rani.
Yeah, the Mark of the Rani.
Yeah. So what did you think of the Mark of the Rani?
I really liked it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say I really liked it, but I would say that I like it a lot more than its reputation.
Well, what's its reputation?
Well, it has a reputation for not being very good.
Really? Well, I mean, really. Well, and I mean, I knew. Obviously, we discussed at great length why, or you know, how Time in the Rani was pretty much hated. But I mean, like, you know, as far as
well, I mean, Time in the Rani is 198 out of 200.
That's true.
And this is on the Mighty 200 poll done by Doctor Who magazine. By the time this episode is released, we may well have the updates of the from the news survey of Doctor Who magazine.
Ooh.
They did a news survey with all of the Doctor Who stories, including the ones that have aired since the Mighty 200 was done. So who knows what will have changed in the winds of fan opinion blowing these stories around. But so Time in the Rani is 198. Mark of the Rani is 148.
Oh, okay.
So that's significantly higher, but it's still pretty low. Like, it's still it's just escaped the bottom quarter.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, that's still not great. That means, you know, if in a batch of, you know, 4 random Doctor Who stories, if Mark of the Rani was one of them, you know, and people were like picking what to watch, they'd pick the other 3 first. Probably.
Probably.
I mean, that's not really how statistics works, but whatever.
Unless they were watching it, you know, in chronological order, and there was a 7th Doctor story.
That's true.
In which case, they'd watch that one after.
Right. Yeah.
In this scenario where they are picking 4 stories at random to watch.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it deserves that.
Yeah, I think it's better than average, personally.
Yeah, you know. Well, and I don't know. On the one hand, like when I was watching it, I was really engrossed in it, but I don't know if it was. I don't know. 6th Doctor stories are just like such a rare treat because there's so few of them. And this was a not terrible one. And you know, so in a sense, you know, I wonder if my good opinion of it is just a little bit inflated because of how rare these are. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, like, it opens with this kind of, this sort of picturesque little...
Yeah, the opening is wonderful. It has this, like, very soothing 80s electronic music.
Yeah.
That, like, suggests this sort of, like, pastoral bliss.
Right.
It has all of these, you know, hardworking folk. It's filmed... it's actually filmed... on an outdoor museum village,
right?
Which sort of exists to it's like a theme attraction for to like display what life was like in a Victorian village.
Do they have, like, actors who pretend to not know what a cell phone is.
I hope so.
Right. I mean, that's kind of a staple.
In any case, like they filmed it there, and they called in a whole bunch of extras, I guess, because there's more extras than you usually see in the classic series, and it's just a really great way of establishing the scene.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like drew me in immediately, and I don't know, and then it just got more and more interesting from there, and it was. I don't know. There was never a point, and I don't know. I just loved all the stuff that they kept introducing, and all the sort of stuff. I mean, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this might be like a really good production of a kind of mediocre script.
That could be. Yeah.
I think most of the stuff I like about it has to do with the production of it, and there's some stuff in the script that I do like, but some of the stuff in it is just kind of there, but.
Yeah, I mean, like, there is some stuff that's kind of goofy, and I don't really... It's sort of a little bit too much, I guess. And I mean, like the landmines that turn people into trees.
Yeah, I think by that point in the story, you got a pretty good sense of, like, what the story's about and what kind of concepts it's asking you to buy into. And then they just kind of blindside you with this really sudden thing about landmines that turn you into a tree.
Yeah, and that I'm that I have to say is a little bit weird, and I'm not wild about that concept.
But I think it's really well done.
No, it is. It's
like the scene where he steps on the landmine and turns into the tree is pretty good.
Yeah, I was surprised by the sort of effects that they sort of like. I mean, like it was. I thought like edited well together. Like it almost you could sort of tell that it was that they were doing kind of a jump cut thing, but I mean it still looked pretty much like a guy was turning into a tree. So like they were able to sort of I guess like hide the fact that they were cutting in with a tree sort of prop by like having leaves sort of fly up, and that I don't know, it looked believable.
Yeah, I believe it. I think it really happened. I like the tree grabbing hold of Perry.
Yeah,
that was well done too.
Yeah.
So even though like that whole idea about trees doesn't make any sense, right. I thought it worked, and it provided for this like tense little thing in the latter half of episode 2 where all of a sudden the entire focus of the story involves navigating a landmine field,
right,
where people might turn into trees.
right.
For like a good 10 minutes or so, that's our primary narrative concern.
right. Well, it's I think they were trying to milk that concept for all it was worth.
Good for them.
Yeah, that's true, because there's the initial thing where it's that one hypnotized guy is leading Perry out into the field on a wild goose chase or whatever, and then they have to get Perry out of there, and then like those other guys kidnap the doctor, and then they get turned into trees, and then the doctor looks like he's about to fall on one of those landmines and get himself turned into a tree. So that's they really do that in every possible variation.
It's commitment. That's what that is.
Yeah, Well, and that might have been done maybe so that no future scriptwriter felt that that tree landmine idea wasn't explored to its fullest potential. Yeah,
they could have brought that back and used it even more.
Oh, wouldn't it have been awesome if they used that in Forest of the Dead, because that's right there, it's built in.
Yeah, definitely.
If that was the twist instead of the Vashta Nerada hatched from the books, what if there's a bunch of tree landmines
that someone just happened to bring
because they thought it would be a good idea? Yeah, if only. But yeah. So I mean, aside from those occasional weird things, I thought it was good. I liked it.
Yeah. I think I'm on record as stating that I have a strong preference for stories that take place largely outside.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this story has a lot of location filming.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, as I found out from the info text on the DVD, is apparently some other show at the BBC that needed a film crew for 1 week accidentally booked it for 2 weeks And so it was all paid for, and they had nothing to do with the film crew. So John Nathan Turner, who was producing Doctor Who at the time, was like, well, I'll take them. And so Doctor Who ordinarily only gets 1 week of location filming for a given serial, but for this one, they got 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so they were able to do more stuff on location, which I thought it's all good, especially with the good use of that location that's, it's right there. It's a museum that's designed to look like a Victorian mining town. So they didn't have to do much to it. They could just take something that had already been built by experts and use it to their purposes. Much like Doctor Who would eventually do in The Fires of Pompeii when they used the set for the BBC drama Rome.
Ah, I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, they just borrowed a set that already existed.
Oh, that's really cool. It's funny because I've never really paid that close attention to how good the set was in that episode, but now I'm gonna have to. But yeah, it's. I mean, I never thought that location filming was better in my mind, but I feel like it is good here, and I mean, like, I don't know, maybe that did improve my opinion of the story in some subconscious way.
Yeah, I think things that are done in a film style versus a video style just tend to have a more dynamic look, and there's a lot of action in this.
Yeah,
that works well on film. A lot of stunt work. And another thing with that is actually Colin Baker does his own stunts. And so that's something that, like, in New Who and also in Classic Who, like, I tend to have gotten an eye for when the Doctor isn't really the Doctor. Like when someone else is riding that horse or hanging off that building. It's something I've sort of become more aware of. But so it's kind of nice to see Colin Baker hanging on a chain down in a well or rolling down a hill strapped to a cart.
Yeah, that's it's funny because like that sort of thing, like with stunts, is something I do never notice, and I don't think I've ever been able to identify when it's not been the Doctor doing these things, but I feel like, I feel like there is something to sort of admire in a person doing their own stunts, and I feel like there is kind of, they do kind of have to work around that and sort of film from weird angles, if it's and so that sort of restricts things. But then when the actor's doing their own stunts, you have a little bit more flexibility with angles and shots, and like they can have their face facing the camera, and that's okay. And so I think it's kind of neat.
It's good stuff.
It is good stuff.
How did you feel about the Master in this story?
Well, he seemed kind of. I mean, like, I don't know if this has been if this was a gradual process over the years, but he seemed especially like goofy in this. In like, I mean, not maybe not especially goofy, but like he was up to his schemes, and he seemed like he was doing a lot of hardcore scheming, which I guess before this, his last appearance was in Planet of Fire.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, that's heavily implied in this episode. And
in that story, he definitely dies.
Well, right.
He's definitely completely dead at the end of that story.
Right,
And they don't even try to explain why he's not dead here.
Well, right. So yeah, because he just kind of shows up, and I'm not 100% sure. I mean, they may have been mentioned like why he was there.
I mean, it's a little unclear. Because on the one hand, he has a plan, which is he wants to make sure all of these geniuses meet, so that he can, I don't know. I mean, so he can use them to his advantage somehow.
Right.
But he's also, it's stated here that he dragged the Doctor's TARDIS off course to bring him here, and I don't think I understand why. Like, what that has to do with his plan. He just wants the Doctor to thwart his plan, maybe?
That could be, that maybe that there's something just about his psychological profile or whatever. Like he just deep down, he just really wants to be thwarted. Like he comes up with all these plans, but they're meaningless if he succeeds and no one's there to sort of marvel at it. I mean, he's got to have the Doctor. Like maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he's just getting up. He's just getting, like, his ego is just growing so much that he thinks that he has like a perfect plan, and it's so perfect that he's actually going to like challenge the Doctor to stop him.
And I like that the episode in the episode, the Rani kind of calls him out on how pathetic that is. Like, he is constantly making fun of. She's constantly making fun of his weird thing with the Doctor.
Oh yeah. Oh well, yeah, and I loved it because there was like one point where I think the Rani was watching the Master on some sort of like, I don't know, camera or something, and she says something like he'd get dizzy if he tried to walk in a straight line. And I just love that because it is ridiculous how the Master's always doing these sort of scheming things, and the Rani's just like not taking any of it. I love that.
Probably my favorite part of the Master's overall activities in this story is how at the beginning, we later find out that he dragged the Doctor here, so presumably he knew where the TARDIS was going to land. So this might go some way to explain why he's dressed up as a scarecrow, propped up in the middle of the field, unmoving, just waiting for the Doctor to come along. I mean, there isn't any real explanation for why he might be doing that. He just is.
I completely forgot about the scarecrow.
Yeah, because at the beginning, like you see the scarecrow, and then the Doctor and Perry are kind of hanging out there and having their conversation. They walk away, and then there's like close on the scarecrow, and it starts to move. And then much later, like you see the Master, like you don't see him like getting out of the scarecrow costume, but you see him like you see a corner of a building, and around the corner, someone throws a scarecrow head down into the frame, and then like throws some hay down, and off comes on screen walks the Master with some hay like under his armpit. And he's just kind of got hay on him, so it's implied that he's the scarecrow, but they don't actually show him in the costume or taking it off.
I think I missed that. I think I completely missed that.
It's completely nonsensical because there's no possible explanation for why he'd be doing that other than just like he gets a kick out of it.
Well, right.
He wants to be there when the Doctor arrives, and like lurking in the shadows in the most convoluted and ridiculous way possible.
Yeah, because at this point, it's almost like he's just like doing a parody of himself, and there's just no reason for it except that he's just doing it for himself.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe he's got it in his head at this point that at some point later he's going to have a dramatic moment where he's going to reveal to the Doctor, "You see, Doctor, I was the Scarecrow," or something along those lines. But he gets kind of sidetracked because then he finds out that the Rani's around, and he gets involved in her whole operation. So he never really gets around to the payoff for that, which is kind of sad for him.
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't be surprised if in his original plan he was gonna don the Scarecrow costume again on separate occasions. Maybe. Just as as a way to sort of hide, like it's like as if it's so he can eavesdrop on the Doctor or something. So the Doctor and Perry will just be walking down the street, and he'll be in his Scarecrow costume, and he'll just be like frozen off to the side, and and then he can listen in on the Doctor's whole conversation, and that'll help him thwart the Doctor or something. I'm sure that was all what he was preparing for. And then he got sidetracked and couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. It's really too bad.
Yeah.
Theoretically, that plan would have worked out perfectly. If the Rani hadn't shown up, I'm sure things would have gone a lot better for the Master.
Yeah. One would think. I mean, they always do.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So I think the director of this story, a lady by the name of Sarah Hellings, who this was the only Doctor Who story she ever directed. Oh. I think she might not have been all that familiar with the Master because she gets a couple of weird things wrong in putting the episode together.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the tissue compression eliminator just vaporizes people.
Right.
Like, it just causes them to disappear.
Right.
It doesn't eliminate or compress their tissue. Maybe it eliminates it. I don't know.
Well, it seems to be very effective in that category.
Not so much in the tissue compression.
Well, yeah. I was kind of briefly confused by that too, because I thought there would be tiny dead people, where when the Master was zapping them and stuff. But yeah. So I don't know. In my head, I think I just assumed it was like a better model or something, you know. Well, no.
So you think that like the doll thing was not an intentional thing before? It was just a side effect of the death ray?
Well, right. He wanted. Yeah. The original intention was the master was gonna make was gonna compress and eliminate so very much tissue that that the evidence would be microscopic. But he could only get it ever get it halfway. Maybe that's why he was tinkering with it in Planet of Fire. He was trying to get that extra compression.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Another thing is that the master hypnotizes Luke, and in order to do that, he swings a pendant in front of his face.
Right.
Whereas what the master would usually do is he would just stare deeply into his eyes and say, "I am the master, and you will obey me." That's usually all it takes.
Yeah. So yeah, it could be. I don't know if there's a good explanation for that. I guess maybe he's kind of slipping. But yeah, that's I guess I think he's just slipping in his old age.
Mm-hmm. I really like the whole, all the interplay between the Doctor and the Master and the Rani.
Yeah.
I like the notion that they all go way, way back and they know each other real well.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It is fun. It's a small world. I guess they could have all just been the troublemakers. Because, in their own way, they are kind of all troublemakers. So I'm sure they bonded over that.
Mm-hmm.
They were the Harry, Ron, and Hermione of Gallifrey.
Which one was which?
I have no idea.
I feel like the Doctor was Harry and the Master was Ron and the Rani was Hermione.
I think it's got to be.
Yeah, I really want to see young Time Lord adventures at the Academy.
Yeah,
I know there's lots of fanfic about that.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
And I think there's stuff about it in the novels, but I was thinking, it would be a good spin-off. Even if you did it without the Doctor, if you put the Master and the Rani and Romana and Barusa or someone, all of the different Time Lord characters, and just gave them their own, wacky adventures.
Yeah, in this sort of high school format. I could see that. Be like Muppet Babies or something.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully it would turn out as good as Muppet Babies.
I would hope.
Did you know about the attempt to kickstart a Doctor and Master origin story?
Really? I didn't know anything about this.
This was a couple months ago, and they were trying for some ridiculous goal. Let me pull it up because it's. I want you to hear how sad it is.
Okay.
So their goal was 1,250,000.
Okay.
What they got was 14,000.
Oh. That's. Ah, wow. That's slightly over what, 1%?
Yeah, just about. They kind of were deceptive in the way they presented it to people. It had all of these vague implications. Well, first of all, I guess at first they didn't want to mention Doctor Who. And they didn't want to say they had the BBC's approval because they didn't, but they had vague implications that they were approved by a network. And it's called A Wild Endeavour. And Wild Endeavour is the name of a continent on Gallifrey, established in some David Tennant episode. He says something about the continent of Wild Endeavour, between the twin mountains of solace and solitude. Something like that. Mm-hmm. And the general premise of that is that one of the characters is the Doctor and one of the characters is the Master, but you don't know which one's which, because they are called by their real names and not the names they'll eventually be known by. So originally the pitch on this Kickstarter was A Wild Endeavour, an original sci-fi prequel, but it didn't say what it was a prequel to. It said eventually they will be arch enemies, but first they were brothers. They stood as brothers. And the big tagline was "Who is who?" But there was no explicit Doctor Who references. And then eventually they, to drum up more interest, they made the Doctor Who thing more explicit, but it didn't work.
Yeah, because, that's a ridiculous goal to begin with. And, I know that there were things like the Veronica Mars Kickstarter, but that's... especially in the case of you're trying to get this much money, you're trying to get this money from Doctor Who fans, you kind of have to be obvious. I just don't see how how they. I mean, yeah, you'd have to. I mean, like word of mouth and this kind of thing is kind of crucial. And I mean, the question is whether or not this would have even, like, if this even could have been made. I mean, I guess like if they were vague enough, then they wouldn't really need the BBC's approval to begin with. But
well, you know that there are Doctor Who fan films out there that get made all the time.
I guess so.
But there aren't very many like $1 million budget Doctor Who fan films.
Yeah.
That present themselves as TV pilots that are gonna go to series, and the legitimacy of this was that it involved Daphne Ashbrook and Yi Ji-so, who were people from the TV movie.
Ah.
Daphne Ashbrook played Grace, and Yi Ji-so played Chang in Chang Li in the movie.
Right.
So they were involved in it, and that was supposed to add some legitimacy.
Yeah, so I could see that.
Didn't really work. But.
Well, right, because there are these. Yeah, that somehow that doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, these actors who appeared in this one-off appearance of in this one thing that in itself wasn't successful. That I don't think that would give me a lot of faith personally if I were pledging my money to this. But
yeah. But an example of like a more realistic Doctor Who fan project, there's this thing called the Minister of Chance.
Oh, I've heard of that.
And the Minister of Chance is tangentially related to Doctor Who, kind of like there was a Doctor Who web serial called Death Comes to Time, which was an animated Sylvester McCoy thing, and it featured a character called the Minister of Chance. So this is a spin-off built around that character, with authorization to use that character, and it has Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann in it, and they raised a modest and reasonable amount of money to do an audio series, and then when the audio series was successful, they raised a modest and reasonable amount of money to do a film, which they successfully raised enough to make a short film, and I think they're still trying to raise more to make a longer film, but I mean, so that's a legit fan project that has people involved and actually has modest goals which it will succeed at.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not crazy.
Right, and that's the kind of thing you want to do. Yeah, $1 million budgets, I'm not so sure. I don't think that's ever a reasonable goal for. Like, I mean, if they had managed to attract, an actor or two from the actual shit, like the actual new series, I could see them raking in a fair amount of money. But I mean, it's just so bizarre. I guess that's kind of what I expected to happen, with how much they actually raised or received or whatever had pledged to them.
It's so sad though, because there's a thing on their Kickstarter page that says it's all about the fan base. When Veronica Mars was on TV, it had about 2.5 million viewers per episode. That wasn't enough to stop the network from canceling the show, but it was enough to raise $5,702,000 on Kickstarter. By contrast, our backers are fans of the most successful science fiction franchise of all time. You do the math. Actually, we'll do it for you. And there's a little graph saying Veronica Mars, 2.5 million, A Wild Endeavour, 10.7 million, which is apparently what they anticipate, by extrapolating. They thought they were going to raise 10.7 million.
But that's so bizarre, though, because, I mean, you can't. Like, I mean, that doesn't, like it doesn't scale 1-to-1. I mean, it's not like there's this 10 million strong rabid fan base that would just throw money at anything Doctor Who related. And
if it was unofficial.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming that the small fan base that Veronica Mars had, they were probably really, eager to see something new Veronica Mars. But I mean, it's kind of hard to justify everyone banding together to make this project happen when, we're going to get more Doctor Who. I mean, people are
eventually.
Well, yeah. People are signed on to do this thing. And, this is currently happening. That's the thing, is it's got so many fans. It doesn't need to be kickstarted. That's so weird, though. Also, I actually really strongly dislike the idea that they would be using the characters' real names.
They would be establishing real names for the characters.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I do kind of like the idea of a story where one of the characters is the Doctor and one is the Master, and you don't know which one's which.
Right.
But because I feel like that kind of fits in with what little we know about their origins and how they were friends at one point and are no longer friends.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's kind of a cool concept that, you'd go through the whole story not knowing who was who, and then their names would be revealed, or who they were would be revealed to us in a meaningful fashion. That's kind of a cool concept, but yeah, I don't know. That just seems strange.
Yeah, it doesn't have that much to do with Time of the Rani. I mean, Mark of the Rani.
No, not really.
It doesn't have that much to do with Mark of the Rani.
It took a while, but I was able to figure out why this episode is called The Mark of the Rani.
Because there's a Mark of the Rani.
Well, yeah, but not even just that, because there are two separate occasions where the Master will come across one of these victims of the Rani. He looks at the red mark on their necks and he goes, "The Mark of the Rani," and he's saying this to absolutely no one but himself. Like, he's just observing this, and he makes such a big theatrical deal of it. Like, this is the Mark of the Rani.
He should always do that. Like, in Planet of Fire, he should have been like, Planet of Fire.
Yeah, it's just constantly remind us what episode we're watching. But it's so bizarre to me. Like, I mean, first of all, I don't know why the Master felt the need to sort of remind himself that, oh yeah, this was because of the Rani. But also, it's weird because it is the title of the episode, so it's like we're being sort of taken out of the episode and just being spoken to directly. Like, hey, this is the mark. This is what the title was referencing, guys. This right here is it. And it just seemed really kind of strange. And I mean, and I wouldn't have thought much of it, except that it did pop up twice. I think it was split. I think it happened in the first episode, and then it happened again in the second episode. And it just seemed really weird that the Master points this out in each episode. I don't know. Like I wonder if he forgot. Like, if he forgot that he did it the first time. And
there was going to be, at one point, this story was going to be entitled "Enter the Rani."
Ah.
So if they had done that, I wonder if they would have worked that into the story where the Master would suddenly he'd come across the Rani and say, "Enter the Rani."
Yeah, that's kind of that would be his version of "Look what the cat dragged in." It would be, maybe he should do that with every person he recognizes that comes in, "Enter the Doctor," and just do that all the time. We had never seen the Rani before, though, right? This was her entrance.
Yeah, this is the first of 3 appearances by the Rani. There's this, there is Time and the Rani, and then there's Dimensions in Time.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, what was the third one? But that's right, Dimensions in Time. Is Dimensions in Time really considered canon, though?
All
right,
I don't know.
I retract the question. I guess that's.
I don't know.
We can pretend.
There was going to be another Rani story in the canceled season 23.
Oh, really?
There was a story called Yellow Fever and How to Cure It.
Okay.
That would have been written by Robert Holmes, and it would have featured Autons and the Master and the Rani and the Brigadier.
Oh, wow.
It would have been just a lot going on in it.
Wow.
And it would have been set in Singapore.
Ah.
And it didn't end up getting made.
That's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, because they canceled the show, and when they ended up bringing it back, they did Trial of a Time Lord. They threw out all their scripts and did Trial of a Time Lord instead of the scripts that they had.
That's unfortunate.
And Big Finish has produced a number of audio stories based on the canceled scripts, but they haven't done Yellow Fever and How to Cure It.
I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know how to cure it.
Yeah. It'll forever be a mystery.
But those 3 filmed appearances of the Rani are the only ones where she ever appeared, and she's never been in a Big Finish audio either.
She's a very elusive character.
Yeah, I think the writers of this story, Pip and Jane Baker, don't want her used without their approval.
Ah.
I don't know under what circumstances that approval would be granted, but
They approved it for Time in the Rani, so I think their standards must be pretty low.
well, they wrote
Well,
Time in the
alright.
Rani, so that shows you how low their standards are. They're not the greatest Doctor Who writers of all time, anytime, or probably even in their own neighborhood. They're the only husband and wife team to write Doctor Who.
Well, I guess that's saying something. I guess they're the best of that. The best husband and wife writers.
They are the best husband and wife writing team.
Well, what I was asking was, I was wondering why the Rani was wearing a disguise at the beginning, because I didn't think we'd ever seen her before.
Well, I think she's wearing a disguise. Well, she's at that point. She's not. She doesn't even know about the Doctor and the Master.
That's true.
So it's not like she's trying to disguise herself from them. She's disguising herself from the people in the village. I think she's just trying to make herself appear like innocuous and unthreatening.
I guess.
Because she's very. She's got a very intimidating and sharp demeanor.
That's true.
So I guess she just wants to lull everyone into a false sense of security.
Well, yeah, I guess I could see that. It could be. Yeah, it could be she was. There could be a science reason for that. I want to believe that everything she does for science. So
she's doing an experiment in disguise science.
Oh, maybe that was the Master's real plan for being there. He thought he could steal her notes on this disguise experiment she's running.
And part of his plot to steal it involved disguising himself as a scarecrow.
Right. If he got caught, he could just use the sympathy card and hope that the Rani would take pity on him for how terrible his disguises are.
I'm on the TARDIS wiki page for the Rani.
Oh, yeah.
I just found out about an audio drama she appeared in.
Ah.
Not a Doctor Who audio drama, but a specific Rani audio drama written by Pip and Jane Baker called The Rani Reaps the Whirlwind.
Okay. All right. So is she supposed to be the hero? Is that?
I don't know. But the publisher's summary begins, the Rani is a prisoner of the Tetraps, those hideous rodent-like vampires over which she once ruled. So that's in Time in the Rani.
Right.
So they have her prisoner, and I'm not going to read the rest of it. So I'm not all that interested.
I think it has quite a bit of potential, though.
Yeah, and Kate O'Mara did star in it.
That's true.
So that's something.
Maybe we should add that to our randomizer.
The Rani Reaps the World.
Well, it does seem like just that one line description does read like it's a sequel to Time in the Rani. Maybe it was written with the intention of redeeming the character somehow.
It was written by Pip and Jane Baker, so I don't know how successfully they could have done that.
Probably not very well at all. Well, I guess I probably am just blocking this out, but how does Time in the Rani end? Because
I don't really remember.
No, wait, no, I'm kind of remembering it now. It's something like the Rani tries to get away in her TARDIS, and then like the Tetrap guy, I don't know, he turns on her somehow. Or am I just making this up?
I guess the Tetraps are in her TARDIS, right?
Yes.
And they mutiny, something like that, maybe?
I think that's true. Yeah, so I guess it does make sense that she would be prisoner after that.
And she would, she'd want to reap the whirlwind.
Yes. That
like you do.
Right, that's you just, your scheme goes wrong, you reap the whirlwind. That's everyone knows that. That's just what happens.
Is that what it was? I don't even remember. Rani reaps the whirlwind. I think that's what I called it.
I think so. Well, that is an expression.
Yes, the Rani reaps the whirlwind. That's what it is.
Yeah. So just going on reaping whirlwinds. That's what happens.
How do you feel about the 2-episode format? Because it's been, we've had stories with the 2-episode format before, but it's just been a while, hasn't it?
I think so. Well, and it's funny because we have watched quite a bit of the Sixth Doctor for this podcast. But yeah, I think we've definitely gotten at least one in that 45-minute format for the Sixth Doctor. But yeah, I kind of like it.
It's much more similar to to the modern day format because the episodes are 45 minutes long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in that sense it was kind of nice. Although it's weird because in my head I was watching this episode and I was trying to figure out where the where the cliffhanger was going to be, and it looked like there were some points where there could be a cliffhanger, like that first time where the doctor's sort of dangling by a chain over that shaft. And I was like, this is going to be a place for a cliffhanger. But then I realized we were only like halfway through the episode. And so that wasn't going to work. But yeah, so it was a little bit disorienting in that regard because the episodes were usually not this long.
What did you think of the cliffhanger?
That was the one that was the second time he was headed towards the mines, right? Where he was on the rails. Yeah,
that was the time when all the guys for reasons mostly unrelated to the plot just pick him up, extract him from the plot, and put him on a cart going downhill toward a mine shaft for some reason.
Right.
So it's just like this sort of random detour into a dangerous situation. It's good though. Apparently, there was a person in the cart underneath Colin Baker steering it and braking it. So just in case you were worried about his safety. Now you don't have to.
Well, maybe a little bit I was, especially now that I know he was doing all his own stunts, He looked like he was pretty well anchored down. So, yeah. I would consider that worrisome. But yeah, it's... I mean, I'm trying to remember... And it's kind of resolved in a weird way, though, because isn't it like he... Like some... Like there's... Because there's like that open pit. I think this is... Like, because he's... And then like some guy comes and stops the cart. Or
yeah, George Stevenson, isn't it?
Right.
Comes to stop the cart.
Well, and he covers the opening, right, or something.
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember exactly what he does.
Or was it? Wait a minute. Wait, no, there were two. Were there two? Am I remembering this correctly? Were there two separate scenes where Colin Baker was tied down to something and it was rolling out of control?
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe not.
Unless I'm very confused, which I might be.
I feel like I need to go back and rewatch this now. But yeah, no, so he's saved, and yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. It's certainly not the best cliffhanger that I've seen.
I think it's fun though.
Oh, it's definitely fun, but it is a little bit weird with another character just popping out and be like, I got you. I mean, I guess actually now that I'm thinking about it, that's how most cliffhangers are resolved, so I really don't have a right to complain. There are like a lot of narrow misses where the doctor's about to be subjected to bodily harm, and he just like narrowly misses it. But there's one point where like I forget what it is. Like there's this I don't know like a large block of wood or something that's like swinging towards him, and it's like gonna knock him into... Am I remembering this correctly?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm,
knocks him into... Or, like, he's going to knock him into, like, the river or something.
And he manages to avoid it through the use of peripheral vision.
Yes, exactly. But it's kind of strange because he's just... It's like you get this shot of his feet, and he's, like, jumping up, and then you see the thing swing out, and he doesn't land in the water, and then he's like, the next scene is him just sort of being okay. And it's, I don't know, it's
peripheral vision.
I guess so.
That's what he did. He did that.
I guess he did.
He did peripheral vision.
He did it. Yeah. Well, good on him. Good on him for having that. Also, possibly a really, really good jump. He was able to jump over it, or maybe just out of the way. But it looks like he's jumping, vertical. But I could be wrong about that. Could be. I think it's a little bit ambiguous and left open to the viewer if he's jumping over it or just out of the way.
So apparently, the Rani was based on a friend of Pip and Jane Baker.
Well, that says nothing good about that friend.
Well, this friend was a neurochemist.
Okay.
And a sort of ardent secularist.
Okay.
And I guess Pip and Jane Baker thought that made her a scheming, amoral, science, evil person.
Oh, I guess it would. Yeah, Pip.
Because I kind of got that feeling where after the thing with the landmines and the trees, the doctor sort of chidingly tells the Rani, "It just goes to show there are more things on heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your barren philosophy." Which I don't really understand where that philosophical criticism is coming from. I mean, it's a Shakespeare paraphrasing.
Right.
But I don't really understand what he's referring to in that particular instance.
Right. Yeah, because it doesn't, I mean, like, it's certainly implied that the Rani's, or maybe more than implied, that the Rani is, just out there doing science for science's sake. And, there's a potential for, I mean, I'm sure that's driven by some kind of philosophy. But it's not super clear, and so yeah.
This is like, actually this is right after the tree grabs Perry, preventing her from stumbling into a landmine. And the doctor turns to the Rani and says, "Now perhaps you'll accept there are more things in heaven and earth than ever dreamt of in your barren philosophy." So I suppose like he blames her sort of modern liberal scientism, materialist viewpoint, physicalism, stuff like that. That's what's responsible for her moral degradation.
I guess so, and that's what's led her to make landmines that turn people into trees. Like, I mean, I guess that's pretty bad. I mean, but I mean, I don't know if there's anything like that. I don't know if like any ethics committee would have stopped that. Like, I mean, like landmines in and of themselves aren't pretty for what they do. I mean, the whole idea is cause people, bodily harm. Transforming them into trees, that's not a whole lot worse. I mean, all things considered, they're still alive, and I guess maybe there's a potential they could be transformed back. I mean, like that's not implied at all in the story, but I mean, they're still a living thing, so maybe it's just a very strange form of stasis, So if anything, it might be, and if anything else, it's good for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, Perry is very concerned at the beginning of the story about the environment.
That's right.
She mentions how all those hedgerows are going to get chopped down to improve farming efficiency.
That's right.
And I mean, she is a botanist, so it makes sense that she would have opinions about that.
Yeah, that's you'd expect that. That's reasonable.
But I bet she wasn't expecting to get grabbed by a tree. Just turns out that there's more things on heaven and earth that are dreamt of in her botany.
Yeah. I wonder if that was like a big deal to Perry, that like what kind of tree it was. Because I mean, if it's not local to that ecology, maybe that would cause a lot of problems. Maybe it would spread a lot more trees of its kind, and sort of be like a weed, and it would sort of outgrow the natural trees in that area. Because I mean, who knows? I mean, this is a tree. God only knows what tree the Rani has engineered. It could be not native. It could be native to, like, I don't know, South America or something. You can't have South American trees in the greater UK area. Probably.
I suppose not.
I bet that's not good. But this is something that I guess isn't really explored in the episode. So I guess I was wrong when I said that there was nothing else to explore with these tree landmines, because I just came up with ecological impact.
Yeah, I like when the doctor speculates that if the master were to turn into a tree, he'd be a laburnum tree, because the pods are poisonous.
Well, yeah, obviously the kind of tree you become is directly related to your character.
Yes. I should think so. I like how he just kind of like takes a moment out of what's going on in the plot to like sort of speculate about what kind of tree they would be. He never says what kind of tree he'd be now. I wonder what kind of tree the doctor thinks he would be.
Yeah, this is
mighty oak.
Yeah, this is like one of those, I don't know, like BuzzFeed quizzes or something, where you figure out what Harry Potter character you'd be. Like what kind of tree turn into if you stepped on a tree landmine.
I like how the Master feels bad about what happens to Luke.
Yeah.
Because Luke gets turned into a tree.
Yeah.
And the Master says, "No! It wasn't intended for him." Because he was trying to get the Doctor.
That's right.
Or he wanted the Doctor to get treed.
Yeah, that's a little...
So he has a little moment of sadness for his hypnotized lackey.
Well, right. And you wonder if he was just sad that he lost a lackey, and he wasted a little hypnosis maggot on him. But he's never gonna get that back. It's
A sweet meat, as he calls it.
Yes, a sweet meat. Yes. Yeah, that in and of itself is a little strange. That he's already hypnotized the guy. He's probably gonna eat whatever you give him. I don't think you need to tell him it's something it isn't. The Master's motivations are just never clear to me.
No, he's just going kind of above and beyond.
Right.
Always with the deception.
Right. He just doesn't know when to stop. I think that's his real problem. Oh, other minor things. The Doctor in this implies that he's met Shakespeare, but
he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, but then in the Shakespeare code, it seems pretty clearly like he hasn't. Unless
he could be lying.
He could be lying, as we know the Doctor lies. That is rule 1. So I suppose
Yeah, I think it's suggested at some point that the Doctor makes some of these things up, but or maybe he just hasn't. He's just not keeping track.
That could be.
Who he's met. He's just forgotten.
Well, actually, he doesn't say. Does he? I don't even remember if he specifically says Shakespeare by name. I think he just says the Bard.
Yeah.
Which, I guess could be any bard.
Well, that is a line from Julius Caesar.
I guess that would.
Unless someone else actually wrote Julius Caesar.
Oh yeah, that could be a twist.
There are expanded universe stories where the Doctor meets Shakespeare. So if you're inclined to have an all-inclusive version of continuity, which is how I am, then you just kind of have to ignore that kind of thing.
Yeah,
sometimes maybe just time gets rewritten so that Shakespeare never met him, so he's got to go meet him again.
Right, and then he's got to act like he's never met him before, otherwise things get awkward.
Right.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the Doctor. He's got to go and do that. But yeah, it's the risk of being a time traveler.
It is.
But I'm fine with that. I don't think this ruins Doctor Who for me.
Really?
It's close, but no. I think I've come to accept that these things are just going to happen. Another thing, are there cats on Gallifrey? Are there Gallifreyan cats? Because that seems to be implied.
Maybe.
That the Lord President had a cat that was eaten by the Rani's experiment. And that's why she was banished, I think. I think that was the implication.
Well, maybe it's a TARDIS translation thing.
Oh, so it's not really a cat, it's
the nearest equivalent.
Yeah, I guess I could see that.
It could be a cat though. Why not?
Yeah, it could be like how a lot of species in the universe look like Time Lords. Maybe a lot of pets in the universe look like Time Lords cats.
Or, maybe they just took a cat from Earth.
That could be, because that's kind of a thing, we obviously domesticated animals that we found in the wild. Time Lords can go anywhere, so they could just go to any planet in any time and take whatever wild animal they wanted and domesticate it. I could see.
Yeah, they could use the time scoop.
Exactly.
Which that's what they use to get people in the 5 Doctors.
That's right.
It's like the big thingy that comes out of the sky and just grabs a cat.
I can see that. Just I'm imagining these several sequences where these cats see this weird sort of cone thing sort of flying at them, and they're running away, but then it catches them and freezes them, and then they're whisked off to Gallifrey. But I believe they also say that there are mice, so I'm guessing that would also have to be. I'm guessing they would have to bring the mice too, because cats.
Well, maybe that's why they got the cats.
Oh, they had a mouse problem, and then.
So they went to Earth and got some cats.
That does make sense. Yeah, of course.
See, Pip and Jane Baker know what's going on.
Yeah, you think they're just kind of making things up as they go along, but they got this all planned out. There's just this rich universe that they're just hinting at. The Doctor makes a big deal about being expressly forbidden from changing history.
I wouldn't say he makes a big deal.
That's
about
true.
it.
He doesn't. He sort of offhandedly said like I forget what he was talking about how some of these big name revolutionary thinkers and stuff were like how important they were.
He says, Perry, how would you like to meet a genius? And Perry says, I thought I already had. And the Doctor says, of course, but I haven't changed the course of history. I'm expressly forbidden.
That's right. So yeah. So I think that's kind of funny when, well, and like, is he expressly forbidden? Like, has that ever been established?
Well, I mean, he's not supposed to meddle. He's not supposed to meddle in the affairs of other species. He's not supposed to do any of the stuff he does.
So that's right. So he's just interpreting it very loosely.
I think he's just being kind of like blustery and setting up like, of course he's conscientious. Oh, I'm so conscientious. I would never do that. Which is kind of how the Sixth Doctor is sometimes.
That's
like,
true.
He's full of crap.
Yeah, and I kind of like that about the Sixth Doctor. I do have to say, like, I mean, I know that the Sixth Doctor wasn't hugely popular, but I don't know. I kind of have a soft spot for him. I kind of like him.
Yeah, I like the Sixth Doctor, but the version of the Sixth Doctor that I like is the audio Sixth Doctor, basically.
I do have to say I do like what I heard of him, and I think, yeah, I would probably say that as well. He's a little bit nicer in that because he is kind of mean here. He's a little mean to Perry at points. And that's not necessarily nice.
Yeah, because I mean just this just before watching this, I was listening to several Sixth Doctor audio plays in which he's like very, kind and compassionate and caring.
Oh wow.
Whereas like he's got his like sort of edge and his bluster, but he's not mean. But like he's really mean to Perry, and like when I was watching all of his stories through for the sake of my marathon viewing, I got really uncomfortable about how unkind he was to Perry. I felt like, why is she still with him? Because he's really horrible to her. He's always, putting her down and being unkind to her. And I feel like, she could probably go back and do botany or go see Howard again. Was that his name, Howard?
That sounds about right. It's definitely a very sharp contrast from the Fifth Doctor. Yeah, and I mean, I would like him to be nicer in the actual show, but I guess it is nice that we have these audios where he is kind of softer and nicer.
Yeah, and I think by the time of Trial of a Time Lord, they make him nicer. They don't actually make it nicer in the script, but Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant decided that they were sick of the horribleness between them, so they decided to just take the same kind of dialogue but play it very differently. Like play it with a lot more sort of humor and happiness, so that it was just like more affectionate ribbing as opposed to like him kind of sneering at her.
Yeah, and I can see that, like, depending on how like certain lines are delivered, they can be nicer. But yeah, so I guess that's nice at least. That is something that like is a nice idea, I guess. Like, or not a nice idea, but like it's an interesting idea to have the Doctor be this kind of, well, this jerk, but it's something that's got to be temporary because that's really going to wear on you after a while. I feel like here it doesn't bother me because I'm only seeing a glimpse of it, and I probably would be bothered if I were to watch a lot of it. So I mean, in this context where it's just like this isolated little thing, I mean, I think it's interesting, but I mean, I think that would kind of wear on me. I'm also not actually 100% clear on how the Doctor's plan works for sort of defeating the Master and the Rani. The whole idea is that he's like messed with their TARDIS, or the Rani's TARDIS, and that's making it so they can't control it, and they're gonna, and like he says something about them ending up like really, really, or he says some vague location like, oh, they'll be halfway across, I don't know, the galaxy by the time they correct it or whatever. But I mean, like, they do have it is a time machine,
so they could just come back.
Right. I don't.
Well, they are sort of being menaced by a T-Rex.
That's true. That's also a problem of theirs.
They've got a bunch of problems.
Yeah, so I suppose, but I mean, like, even so, once all that is sorted, I don't see why they couldn't just return. But
Well, and they do they do both get out of this.
right.
Although I don't think we ever find out how. I mean, the Master next appears in Trial of a Time Lord, and the Rani next appears in Time and the Rani.
Right.
Separate, apparently having dealt with this in parted ways, but I don't really know how.
I guess it could be that the Doctor was hoping to just distract them long enough that by the time they had all their problems fixed, they would have forgotten that they had been doing this thing before. Be kind of like where you walk into a room with the intention of doing something, but then you forget what it was you came into that room for. So maybe he was hoping the same effect would happen to the Master and the Rani. He'd get them out halfway across the galaxy or whatever, and then they would forget why they came there.
Maybe that happened. Maybe that's how it worked. Do you think the Rani should come back?
No. I don't think.
No.
Well, I feel like maybe in a very long time they could bring her back, and that would be an interesting thing. But I mean, I feel like if they need like a Time Lord villain, they can probably just go with the Master. I think. Well, I don't know. I feel like it might be too much of a gimmick at this point. Like, I mean, I think the Rani, it does have a cool kind of raison d'etre where she's just doing everything for science. And that's like a cool thing, but I mean, like, you don't have to have a Time Lord be that, like, to have a character like that is.
I think, the thing is, every female character who's been on Doctor Who, who's been a major character, has been speculated to be the Rani by the fans. Every single one. I mean, Rose was speculated to be the Rani. Martha was speculated to be the Rani. Donna was. Amy was. River was.
What about Jenny?
I don't know.
Because that would be a twist.
It would certainly be a twist. But yeah, so I mean, it's constantly being speculated. There's been a character announced for the upcoming season who is widely being speculated to be the Rani. It kind of sucks the fun out of it. Because, when eventually it's probably going to be the Rani, right?
Well, it stands to reason. Balance of probabilities and all.
So it'd probably be better if they just, held off for a really long time to the point where people just stop speculating about it. So that when it finally is the Rani, it'll be when everyone least suspects it.
Yeah, there you go. That is how that should work. Yeah, at this point, and you just know if whatever character turns out to be the Rani, you just know a bunch of people are going to be like, I knew it all along. And yeah, we don't want a bunch of people on the internet like that.
And some people will know it, and then it'll get spoiled in advance because something will leak, and then everyone's going to know it's the Rani in advance, so all the surprise will be ruined. So they just shouldn't bother.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they should just not make it a surprise and just be upfront about it and be like, and even just pass a memo around to the BBC, be like, hey, we're gonna be casting the Rani, and just no secrets whatsoever.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know if they can do that.
I don't think they can, but
we're gonna be doing a Rani story in 2 years, so we're starting to put out feelers for casting now. We don't know who's gonna write it yet.
Yeah, so
who should write a Rani story?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I feel like Pip and Jane Baker are the only ones who can. Are they still around?
I mean, they're still living. I don't know if they're still writing though.
Maybe they need to pass the torch on to someone else, some other couple writers.
Yeah, they're out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know who I'd want to write the Rani. Probably. You know what? I just don't even know.
Yeah.
There's a character called Rani in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's just her name, Rani.
But, surely there's been massive speculation.
I mean, that show's not in production anymore, so any speculation now is fruitless. But
that's true. Doesn't stop there being speculation, though.
No, I mean, there are probably some people who continue to headcanon that she is indeed the Rani, not just a person named Rani. So, Lewis, you know what I think?
What do you think?
I think that it's time to select the story to randomly watch after the mark of the Rani.
I think that too.
All right. Thank you for your weighing in on that. All right. So the random selector is being primed and readied. It is activating. It is waking up. And the story is The Shakespeare Code.
Ooh.
Featuring the 10th Doctor and Martha.
Yeah. It's kind of the first Martha story we're getting, because Blink doesn't really count, and
I suppose not.
And I wouldn't really count the Sontaran stratagem either.
Let's not.
So yeah, this would be the first one.
Well, yeah, that'll be interesting then.
Yeah, I don't think I ever really. I feel like when I was when I was like binge watching to catch up on New Who, I feel like I wasn't actually paying attention to the titles.
Really?
Because I get the sense that if I'm remembering this correctly, actually I don't remember how I first watched the Shakespeare Code, because I feel like I was recording them off of cable, so it would just be whatever came on, and obviously it does, like, the DVR does save the titles, but I don't think I ever really looked. I guess I looked to sort of see if I remembered seeing that one, but if I don't know, if I didn't recognize the title, I didn't think much of it. But the Shakespeare Code is a weird title that you do think about.
I vividly remember first watching the Shakespeare Code.
Oh yeah,
because this was the first season of Doctor Who that I was watching live.
Ah,
And I remember it more vividly than first watching Smith and Jones, to be perfectly honest.
Huh. Well, we're right, because Shakespeare Code is what, the second episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's yeah.
And if I remember, I think, like, I torrented it. And you know how in some torrent clients, if you're downloading a video, you can have it prioritize the packets so that you can, essentially buffer the video.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I did that, and so I remember just watching the first 10 seconds of it and then not being able to watch any further and being like, damn it. And I remember I did that several times just to check up and see how it was going. And the very opening of it is this guy singing a serenade. He's got a musical instrument that he's plucking, and he's singing a little song.
Oh, I remember that.
To some lady who's up in a window. And so I remember that so vividly because I probably saw the first few seconds of that so many times.
Well, that would do it.
And then eventually I got frustrated, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have to walk away from this. Because by that point it was 60 or 70% done downloading, but it was only giving me the first few seconds. So somehow the prioritization wasn't working out well. So I was like, you know what, screw this.
Yeah. Well, and then you'd hit the opening credits, and then God only knows how long that would take to get past.
Exactly.
Yeah.